presidential year was the most successful of any fundraising tenure up until that point. We can no longer use those terms, though, unfortunately. He's also been the National Fund Chair for Harvard Law School for 2 years and Chairman of the Brooklyn College Foundation for 4 years. It is clear that when Roy does something, he's really in it and is committed to it and loyal to it. He's produced dozens of Broadway musicals and plays, including numerous Tony Award winners, including hits like The Color Purple, The Book of Mormon, Cinderella, Rocky, and Bullets Over Broadway. And one of your current favorites, one of my current favorites of your production was the Tony nominee, After Midnight. Have any of you seen that one? Just wonderful. Oh. And Mothers and Sons. At the end of tonight's discussion, we encourage each and all of you to ask some questions of your own. There should be a card on each of your seats. If you don't have one and you hold your hand up, someone will bring one to you. That will be in the third hour. And if you hold your card up, it will be collected and passed forward to me. So now let us begin. Thank you again for joining us. Let's start with your early years. And tell us about the trajectory that took you from earning a college degree in the heart of Brooklyn before it was cool to what has been a remarkably diverse and consistently successful international career.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction as well. It's funny, I jokingly say that it took me all of my early years to get out of Brooklyn, and now everyone is trying to get into Brooklyn. Must be something about my leaving. But I think it all stems from the fact that I am a believer in change. I'm a change agent. I believe that life passes you by quickly unless you are the initiator or the promulgator of change. You know, we tend to look back and say, wow, how did we get here? It's now 5 years later, 10 years later. And so for reasons I don't yet understand, but from early days, I believed in trying new things, doing things. I was fortunate enough, graduating from Brooklyn College, which is one end of the spectrum in terms of reputation, to have been able to go to Harvard Law School. Canyon. I was planning to go into advertising. I was a feature editor and editor of my paper and yearbook in high school and college, and thought I could write well, and I thought that advertising would be the place for me, so I majored in psychology and minored in English, and then ended up in law school.
Perfect preparation.
Perfect. And I had planned on it. I realized when I graduated, as I was graduating in my senior year of college, I realized that no matter how well I had done, that I would forever be branded as someone who went to Brooklyn College. And sadly, in the world we live in, where brands matter inordinately, and I do speak to many college kids, I'm on a lecture circuit at graduate schools and colleges, and one of the things I do say is, you will always make your own way and find your own way, but at the beginning, brands matter. And Brooklyn College, to me, was a brand that would not help me. And so I went to my college advisor and ended up saying, get me into an Ivy League school so I can have another degree. I was still thinking of going into advertising. End result was I was able to get into Harvard, and I practiced for a few years. It was somewhat bored by the law.
Was your Harvard Law School education a defining moment in your early career?
It remains a defining moment. That is what's so interesting to me. I knew that it would be helpful as I grew, but I never thought it would still redound to my benefit. And it does forever. Where somehow those brands, they stick to you. And when you say to someone, even today at a business meeting or anywhere where you tell someone that you went to Harvard Law School, they sort of say, that validates you. It's an instant validation. It does not mean that if you went to Brooklyn College that you can't prove it, but the validation is pretty immediate, and I found that throughout life. It also did two other things for me. It taught me, it showed me how smart people can be. And when in growing up, you never have a chance to know how good you are. You think you're good, you get good grades, or everyone says you're terrific, but there's really no way to quantify or scale yourself. And I happened to go to a school where I did extremely well, and therefore I assume, okay, I'm pretty good. And then you get to Harvard, and you get shot down so fast by so many people who are so much smarter than you are, and then you begin to find where you are intellectually and socially and academically. And the third thing it did was it opened up a world of global dimension to me. Brooklyn College was provincial, and Harvard Law School is national. So that was the international. And that was the third thing it did. It opened my eyes to how little I knew about the rest of the world. Can I give you one aside?
Yes.
Can I give you one aside? The first night at Harvard, which was the most frightening night of my life, the kids all said, let's go to Harkness and have dinner. And I sort of said, sure, we'll all go. And we got into a discussion, this was in the 60s, of apartheid. And I spoke up. Everyone at the table spoke up, and I spoke up very violently against apartheid. And one of the kids at the table turned to me and said, when was the last time you were in Africa? I was 19 years old, 18 years old. I had never been outside of New Jersey. And what amazed me about the question was not only have you ever been, it was not even, it was a given. Not only have you ever been there, it was when was the last time you were in Africa.
I now know that's an old trick too.
Well, these kids knew, and they all told, I was in Johannesburg this summer, I'm working for the impoverished, I'm doing this for the, and what I ended up doing when I was able to make some money in the real world, I endowed at Brooklyn College the Furman Fellowship, Furman Fellows, which is a money given to students. They must travel outside the country, and they must be educated outside the country, and I'll pay for their whole educational career. And I've done this now for about 15 years because I realized what a shortfall you get in these provincial places.
So here you have this broader view of the human condition. You no longer think locally, but act globally. How did you seek a seat at the table? What made you start investing in Broadway shows?
I've always loved theater, and since I was a kid, I didn't have many opportunities. I was born poor, and my mother took me to some shows when I was, I guess, about 12. And what I began to understand, and it always fascinated me, was that you could go into a theater, and there was a stage, and that stage could transport you somewhere into another place, and it was just in front of you. The movies were terrific, and I love film as well. Film, you knew, you understood that they could do that, because they could film it anywhere, and they could create what they wanted to. But I was always fascinated as a child by the ability of the people doing it to make a box this big that we're sitting on into something. So I always loved the theater, and my first investment was in a show by Alan Ayckbourn called Absurd Person Singular. Does anybody remember that? Alan Ayckbourn is still writing, by the way.
It's his 78th play to celebrate his 75th birthday, which will be this fall.
Amazing, amazing man. But he wrote the show that I think Carol Schilling was in. I can't remember. And somebody approached me and said, would you like to be an angel? And I said, sure, how much? And it's $5,000, which was not a small amount in those days. Not small amount today either. But it was, so I said, okay, I'll do it. And then I enjoyed, that was getting to an opening night and sort of being an investor. And the 5 became 10, and the 10 grew. And as it grew, at some point in the 90s, I sort of said, why am I a middleman? Why am I giving somebody else money and they have a seat at the table and I don't? And
So what was the lure and the reward, as you see it?
Of
Getting
what
more
way?
involved.
Getting involved? First I love the people. Some of them are insane, really crazy, but many of them are grounded and wonderful. But they're rich, fascinating people, and even the crazy ones have extraordinary lives, and it's fascinating to be in their world. So I enjoyed that, and I love the creative process. I love the fact that you can take whole cloth and turn it into something, and that's the attraction to me. Financial is very secondary, which sometimes is a good thing.
In a brief conversation with you, we touched just at the edge of the difference between a producer and an investor. So there are many different roles in production. Perhaps you'd give us a little Baedeker, walk us through the different roles, explain the difference.
Okay. Investment is relatively simplistic. It is what it is. You invest in a show, and you can invest. There are producers who will take as little, I think today, as $7,500 or $10,000 in a show that may cost $12 million. And you can invest any amount of money if you can get into that area through people you know. And investment gives you nothing, no involvement in the show other than being, if you put enough up, you get opening night tickets, you may get second night tickets, but you get the benefit of the psychic benefit of being able to tell your friends that I'm an investor and I'm involved, and it's very heady, and when it works, it's joyous for people who put in almost nothing, because nobody's, well, it can be lucrative, but it's not, I don't think people put $10,000 into a show to make real money, because if it returned 2 to 1, which is a very handsome return in theater, you'd make $10,000. It's not as if you're going to break the bank. Stocks will do better if you catch the right stock. But you get that psychic thrill out of being able to tell people, and no one, if you say to somebody, I have money in that show, no one is ever going to say to you how much. So therefore, you can put any amount in, and you're an investor. It's your show.
You must have had 10,000 investors in Book of Mormon, because everybody said.
Well, success, what did JFK say? Success is orphans. What is it? So failure is an orphan, and success has many fathers. Thanks. I knew I was going there. But anyway, Mormon actually was not, interestingly, did not do that well at the start. Most people were afraid of it. Most of the establishment was wary of Book of Mormon because it was filthy and because they were worried. It was about Africa and it cast disparaging comments and it was filthy and whatever. And a lot of people backed away from it. My own late wife suggested to me, and almost never did this, told me not to invest in it because as vice chairman of a public investment firm, she was worried that if there had been a backlash against the show, it would hurt me in the business world. I disregarded her, but fortunately, that's the success of a lifetime. Book of Mormon, like a chorus line. There every 10 years. Wicked, 10 years ago. Book of Mormon, for that chorus line.
And what's next?
What's next? I'll talk to you later.
It's a revival that you will be involved in next fall.
Yes. Well, it's next late in the spring. This is a funny thing happened on the way before.
And you might tell them who's starring.
For those of you who know theater, it's an interesting problem we have. It's starring James Corden, who won the Tony for One Man, Two Governors.
The
Anyone
guy
see that?
falling down the stairs.
Anyone see it?
Toppling over everything.
I think I'm in trouble. Nobody has saw that. You saw it.
Yes.
James,
he's Zero Mostel, I trust.
James Corden is playing Pseudomus, and it hasn't been revived in 19 years since Nathan Lane did it, and before that Zero Mostel, and each of them won Tonys for it. It's a Tony-winning role. It's one of the most brilliant shows ever written by Larry Gelbart and Bert Shevelin. Very funny people. And Stephen Sondheim wrote the music and the lyrics. And not only is it the first he ever did both for, but it's also the only happy show he ever wrote. It's a pure comedy. It's the show that begins with Comedy Tonight, something familiar, something, if you know that. But anyway, James Corden won the Tony for One Man, Two Guvnors. He's a Brit, very roly-poly, sort of like Bud Abbott. Maybe a little taller, but sort of rotund, but breathtakingly funny. He has a chance to be the sort of great comedian of the modern times. He's that good. He's just breathtakingly brilliant. And I approached him to play Pseudonymous, saying you were born for this role. And he gave me the typical star answer, which was, I want to do a drama. And I said, James, not yet. Do one more and be a big star. Because One Man, Two Guvnors was a British comedy that cleaned up and sold out in New York. You won the Tony. It was brilliant, but it was seen by a handful of people. And it ran for a short time. For him, give us a year. That's the standard effort. Give me a year, and you'll be a star.
There's another question. Some of your shows, at first glance, seem like very unlikely successes. So what is your inner radar? What is your predictor of how a show will take off?
Well, to me, there are two kinds of shows. There are shows that I look at commercially, and there are shows that I do because I believe they must be done. And in that sense, I'm also different from many of the people because I can fortunately write a check to support my vision and not have to ask people to invest with me because I think it's a statement being made. Thurgood Marshall, the show that was done on Broadway with Lawrence Fishburne, which was a wonderful show seen by about 11 people. It was clear that Thurgood Marshall was not a big draw.
And it was out of time as well.
At the time, and still,
it was a wonderful show. We did see.
The African American audience remains 2 or 3% of the audience. It's a shame. I did Plum Purple where it did work, but this was a challenge. But my view was it had to be done. It simply was an important play about an important man, and so I produced that. And that's one where there's no radar. The radar only tells me write a check and rip it up because you're not getting any returns. On the other shows, over time, it's like portfolio management in Wall Street. If you do enough of them, at some point you learn what to avoid. That is really the trick. Is if you can minimize how many shows that filter through, then you have a better chance of doing well. But this is a guy who believed that Rocky would run for 10 years, and it's closing after half a year. And the real thing,
time also.
What you learn is there's no accounting for taste. There's no accounting for how the public reacts. They embrace certain things that you think they might not. You can never be right all the time, clearly. But what I do is I try to see if it's the commercial side, what I think will not work, and I discount those, and then I go for the ones that are interesting to me, and where I think there's a combination of elements. Last year, Raising the Sun, Denzel Washington, no-brainer. This year I'm doing Elephant Man. Anybody want to see Elephant Man?
Yeah.
How many hands? 3. Oh, good. Now, how about Bradley Cooper in Elephant Man? No, I would expect more hands. This side of the room is not.
They're very carefully paying attention.
But anyway, but Bradley Cooper is doing Elephant Man, and I think that would be an event, and therefore.
And it's a short run, isn't it?
They're all short runs with these people because they can only give you so much. But I think it'll be interesting. So some of them are easy because they have
And he's
so
played
much.
that role before.
What's that?
Hasn't he?
Oh, he played Wings now.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometime. I just figured that Bradley Cooper in a tunic of some kind would sell tickets.
Now ask the question.
What's that?
Now ask the question. Bradley Cooper in a tunic.
Oh, Bradley Cooper in a tunic.
Yes.
Yes.
You raised just as an aside, in an earlier response, a very important question. That is not only about the future of Broadway, the future of theater, how you develop new audiences, younger, more diverse, and those perhaps that are more attuned to new technology and electronic devices and so on. So that's about a four-part question, but you're accustomed to juggling, so please.
Okay. Well, first of all, the future of theater, I think, is getting brighter and brighter. I'm not trying to be optimistic and silly, because I think I'm a realist, but in a world of miniaturization and everything being on screen, where you can watch movies on something like this, on an iPhone or an iPad or a tablet or whatever it may be, where increasingly I find the younger people today are isolated from themselves as well as the world. They are so lost in their machines, there's very little communication, very little contact. I do believe the experience of seeing something live in front of you that can't be replicated by looking at it on the screen, I think it has greater value. And remember, they were doing it in the Greek days. They've been doing theater live forever. I have a feeling it will continue to grow as an endeavor for people to enjoy. The problem we have, bigger in my opinion than even attracting audiences, because I mean, people do want to see shows, is the cost. The costs are prohibitive, and we are killing the business by our pricing. I'm trying to be a one-man band, trying to slow it down on Broadway, but you can't. Because even on shows that I run, where I'm the main producer, where I have control, and I say, let's not raise the price, let's try to hold back. What you get is, people lose so much money on Broadway. When you finally have a hit, you've got to take advantage of it. You can't just be a good guy and say that it will come in. So it's a real problem. The price structure is very high. It costs now, for a good orchestra seat, without discounting, $300 a pair.
At least,
a family,
unless you want to sit on
if
the
you're
aisle.
premium, but with a family of four, $600. It's no surprise that what's happened to the industry is what's happened to the movie industry, which is there is no middle. There used to be a middle in the movies, there used to be a middle on Broadway. Now you either are a hit or you are a failure. You have no time to recover if you're a failure, because the cost to run the show per week is so high, and if the ticket price is so high that people say, well, I'd rather go to one than two, and the one that I want to see is Wicked or Lion King, and if you're number 5, they'll never get to you, and so you fail and you close. So the industry, yes, the selectivity will become more important because the hits will be bigger, the failures will be worse, and then comes this audience question. The demographics of the United States are changing. It's expected that in 20 years, the whites will be a minority in the country. It's happening very rapidly. Hispanics are now, 30%, something like that. I have 33.
And in major urban centers, 50 plus.
It's quite remarkable, and the industry is behind times in terms of servicing them. A lot of it is development work. You have to go out and work to bring these people in, because they're not cultivated. They haven't learned it. This is, by the way, the great problem, if I may say so, in speaking where my Vice Chairman Lincoln Center had. The problem of the high arts, whether it's theater, ballet, opera, symphony, the young people today don't understand any of that. They never learned it at home. They don't get it in the schools. To me, the failure of the schools, of the education system to provide it is a scandal, but it's one of many scandals we've been with. But these kids don't know what these things are. I headed the Lincoln Center study. We had 18 directors working for 2 years on trying to develop the audience. And the staff at Lincoln Center kept coming back to me saying, don't worry, our statistics show that when you reach the age of X, and that day was 40 years old, even if you've never been to an opera, you'll go to an opera. If you've never been to a symphony, you'll go to a symphony. And I rebutted them by saying that that was people like us, people who were either Eastern European bred or were raised in a world, in a home that played music, in a home that introduced used it even if they didn't teach it to you. But today, it's a total tabula rasa. These kids don't have that background, and so to get them to see something like this is very hard. Theater is easier. Opera and ballet, let me tell you,
You
it's
raised actually an important issue. Because of your experience at Lincoln Center, both the parent body and the Film Society, you have a greater idea of the issues that face what some refer to the high arts, especially the opera and symphony orchestras. It was 40 years ago when all orchestras were about to go out of business, when the greatest Medici was the Ford Foundation to resuscitate them. But I read daily things about our beloved Metropolitan Opera, whatever its limitations. It is unique in the world. And there are huge pension funds, there are huge labor costs, the cost of a production. How does that kind of organization manage to stay in business?
well, it's a problem. They're fighting a real fight. It should have been 40 years ago, but they're fighting at least now. They've finally taken a stand, saying we'll close down, so we'll take a strike. I was very struck that the Long Island Railroad situation seems to have been settled, despite all the rancor and all the hysteria. Settled today.
But they were offered 17% rise
Over
as
7
well.
over 7
By the
years.
time they were through.
Over 7
And
years.
it's the largest commuter railroad in the country.
But
So there was a lot at stake for a lot of people.
agreed, but I will wait to read the fine print. But I have a feeling inroads have been made. That is, new employees do not have the old employees get. It's a whole. There's a fight back now, and I think that the unions are on the wrong side of some of this. But in New York, especially, and in the various cities that have a high arts that way, big opera companies, big symphonies, the unions are entrenched, and they are ridiculous. I was on board of the city opera and watched what these unions did. It was outrageous, and sometimes they're almost saying to you, "We'll go out of business if you want," which we did, unfortunately. Should never have happened. All those with an efforts being made to resuscitate it now, which I think is going to happen. But it's a terrific
Now
job.
that they've sold all their sets and costumes.
They'll start again in a small venue. They have a very interesting venue in mind. I think it's going to work, but
The Armory.
I'm not talking. But anyway, it's a real challenge. Movies are easier. The young kids go to movies and they watch them on these gadgets, and they see them, they download them, they Netflix them. Movies are there. I think theater will survive because it's just too exciting, and there are so many ways you can see it in a local place, in a school, and they do earn it because they do camp shows and they do high school shows, and people see it. But it's becoming a real challenge, and one of the ways is producers like me who can pick product have to take product that can have an impact on that marketplace and generate the interest that way.
But I have the latest studies, to my surprise, excuse me, and delight, that the age of the audience has been lowered, like from 48.5 to 42.5 in the last study. Or is that just a very obscure study that I read?
I don't know the statistics, but statistics can lie, and it may be reflecting is the older audience that's not going to many of these, whether because of cost, health issues, or whatever. And it may just be, if you eliminate a great many people who used to go who are here, then by definition, the average age will lessen. It may just be that. I don't know the answer. Ironically enough, by the way, the arts, anybody want to guess which of the high arts is not in danger?
Sports.
No, of the artistic, of what we call the high arts, which is the one?
David, you must know.
Anyone? Dance. Good answer. Dance. For whatever reason, that dance, young people love dance. And that's the one that's actually doing better. And when you go, I went to see ABT at the Met a few weeks ago, God, I must have been the oldest person in the audience. Quite the opposite of what you see. So dance is working. By the way, speaking of dance, I am also the lead producer of a show that many of you will want to see. I'm going to ask for a show of hands again. Please, this side of the audience, please raise your hands.
Please.
But I'm going to be the lead producer of An American in Paris on Broadway. Yes? Oh, look at this. And it's very exciting. It's being directed and choreographed by Christopher Wheeldon, who is the genius, the young genius of the ballet world, who was the youngest resident choreographer in the history of the New York City Ballet, younger even than Jerome Robbins, and I think he is the next Jerome Robbins. The work is breathtaking, and the excitement for those of you who know ballet is Robbie Fairchild, who is a 6'5" Adonis, and the Times just said the most beloved male dancer in America is leaving the City Ballet, where he is principal dancer, to star in the Gene Kelly role for 1 year, and we're opening it in Paris in November. So it's very exciting. American Paris in Paris, and it is being timed for the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, which obviously in Paris means a hell of a lot.
It's not the 70th anniversary
of the end of the war.
Yes, which was 45 to 2015.
So it'll be running, it opens in the end of 14 into 15, and between D-Day, the celebrations for D-Day, 70 years, and the end of the war, Paris, the entire, well, most of the continent is pretty excited, and this show
17 nations are cooperating on all of their celebrations.
It's going to be a lot of stuff, but this is well timed, and we're doing it with Robbie Fairchild to dance the role, and what it turns out is he's got the charm of a Gene Kelly, and he can dance far better than Gene ever knew how to dance. And he's beautiful to look at. He's also 6'5", and an Adonis. And the woman, Leslie Caron, is from the Royal Ballet. So it's going to be interesting. And we're doing the Gershwin music, the big hit songs we're interpolating, as well as American in Paris, Sweden, and a lot of stuff. It's not a dance show fully, but they'll be able to dance.
Oh, that sounds
paid ahead from doing this.
Very exciting. In fact, your passion, excitement, and engagement pervades everything you say and inspires us to want to see that. But it's clearly inspired people closer to you, right in your own family. Roy's daughter, Jill Furman, is a successful producer in his own right, most notably of In the Heights. By the way, is Miranda doing a new show this fall?
Yes, she's doing, my daughter's doing it, and it gives a dad great pleasure. Jill has probably the best record in the industry. She had worked with me early on to learn the business and then said, enough, I don't want to ever do another show with you. She said that. She don't want to do it on my own, and I don't want to do a Me Too show.
Does he need that mic that I took? Is it okay?
She told me that she wanted to go on her own, and she wanted to find new voices, new sounds, new talent, and that's what she's been doing. And her record is miraculous and stunning and whatever. She did Drowsy Chaperone, if any of you saw that,
Yes.
which was a weird, wild, wacky show, really clever. Original, that's what she loved it. And then one night, I got a call from her, very excited. She said, Dad, I just saw a college graduate from Wesleyan. He's 22 years old, and I listened to his music, and I think he's a genius. She called and said, but I need you to validate it. I don't want to overstep myself, but I'm so excited. And so my wife and I went the next week or day, whatever it was, to meet the guy who became Lin-Manuel Miranda, for those of you who know theater. And Lin-Manuel wrote In the Heights, and she heard In the Heights, which he wrote as a college thesis at Wesleyan. And she worked with him for 5 years. She worked with 2 other producers, but she discovered him. And it won the Tony. She accepted it on CBS, much to her parents' delight. And she found him, and she's been nurturing that relationship. And he has now written a new musical, which is coming in January to the public theater, and then we have every reason to believe on Broadway. But it's called Hamilton,
Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton. And the original name was the Hamilton Mixtapes, now called Hamilton. And it is, my opinion, I saw a workshop with the public theater people, whatever. I think it's the most brilliant piece of theater I've seen in the last 20 years. It is extraordinary. It is hip hop. It is rap. It is rapping George Washington moderating between Thomas Jefferson and Hamilton, Burr, stuff going on the stage that is, to blow your mind, extremely accessible. I walked out of the workshop saying, and this is related to the question of how you get other audiences. That show, I said to the head of the public, should be required of every high school student in the country to see politics and government in a way they can relate to.
Did you feel that way about Andrew Jackson too?
No.
Just checking.
I didn't like Andrew Jackson, but Hamilton. But anyway, it's nice to have a reporter who is in the business and doing wonderful work. And she's doing also Dead Poets Society, which is probably a very good show for Broadway.
So, excuse me, having tried you taking her shows, which are your favorites?
Of mine or of that I produced? My favorite is probably Color Purple. Because I was warned by everybody that you couldn't do it. It was an expensive show. It was about, as you know, downtrodden black woman, Celie, and it is a story of hope and wonderful and surprise as a book by Alice Walker. But to bring it to theater, I was told was idiotic. And very simply, they said African Americans don't go to theater, and white people will not go to see a black show. That was as simple as that. No one in the industry would fund it. No one helped to fund it. Therefore the triumph became all the sweeter. It's become a phenomenal success. It ran 2.5 years on Broadway and 5 years on the road. And helped them all, I would tell you, by a phone call I received from somebody in Chicago.
She was
very late in the day. Miss Winfrey called and said, would you like to come to Chicago? And it's like being asked by the Pope if you'd like to come to Italy. So my co-producer and I went to Chicago, and she said she'd like to be involved in the show. And Oprah's involvement gave us the big push, which we didn't know. It was about 2 weeks before the end of rehearsals. But nevertheless, it's my greatest triumph of not economically, but in terms of my excitement about the business.
Someone just asked a question forward, and because of all of your profound involvement in education as well, and we'll get to that in a moment, and she raises, I think it looks like a woman's handwriting, so I'm just guessing, but the question she raises is that school budgets have been capped at 2%. There's absolutely no money for field trips for school children to attend shows in New York City or even other shows. Are there funds that are available? Aren't there rehearsals that so many people invite school children to come to?
There are funds, there are foundations that are supporting it, there are educational programs in New York. Lincoln Center has the Lincoln Center Education Division, which is very active. It's not enough, but it's an effort that's being made by some. But it's a real crisis. The crisis, by the way, frankly, it's not the arts is secondary. The real crisis is education itself. The educational system is terrible. The best news I've heard in years was the tenure case in California, where tenure was overridden as unconstitutional. I don't know if it will stand up, but it was a fantastically positive decision, which will now lead many states. New York is working on one already to begin initiatives of their own to stop the tenure system, which has facilitated all kinds of lazy. I'm not denigrating all people who have tenure, but it does induce people not to work as hard once they get tenure, and they don't care as much, and there's no incentives, and good people get passed by. It's terrible. Arts is a secondary element. It's very, very bad. We are training. We're raising a younger generation that is not as well educated as their parents, and certainly in the arts not as well educated. bigger, far more global issue is that they're not being educated properly. It may account for one of the reasons that younger people today don't have a sense of optimism. When you ask young people today, will your life be better than your parents? It's the first time in American history where the answer is no. Majority do not believe they will do as well as their family, and no one ever believed that. Certainly, no one in this room, when you were growing up, didn't think you would exceed what your parents have done. And part of it is all systems.
You are a man of many, many interests. The law, finance, real estate, theater, music, films. How would you describe yourself?
Crazy.
No. Busy. But is there a consistent element in all of these interests?
I love to be stimulated. I love to be excited. God has been good to me. I get the right genes. I have a very high energy level, and I can juggle 5 things at once. And I believe if you can do it, you can do it. And I am that way with my friends. Some of them are here in this room, but no matter what I'm doing, if the child of one of my friends needs advice or help, everything stops. Because I believe that we have to mentor young people. I am lucky enough to have that energy, and I've been successful, so therefore I can do more things.
You touch on another thing that is central that I should have included in that litany of your interests. You are very interested in leadership and the training of leadership. In fact, it is manifest in the Roy Furman Chair at Harvard University. And for those of you who are familiar, it is held by one of the most respected persons in intellectual property, technology, Larry Lessig, the Roy Furman professor. How did you get from here to there? How did you develop that relationship, and what do you do in that program?
I whispered to you earlier that I learned something from Ayn Rand in Atlas Shrugged, and don't recoil. But Atlas Shrugged spoke to me when I was a young kid, and what it told me, not her objectivism, not the idea that you can be selfish and do whatever you want, blow up your own buildings, like that's how we all did. But Atlas Shrugged left a very deep impression on me as a young person. I read it every 10 years of my life, reread it, because it spoke to the importance of leadership, the importance of one man as against the pack. And I am a fervent believer that if anything covers my work in theater and Wall Street, it has been an attraction to inordinate talent. You asked before what interests me about theater, and I began by saying the people. I find that way in business as well. Give me one great businessman, and I will take that over a better business, a better opportunity. Give me the right person.
How about businesswoman?
Pardon me. I want to be gender specific, but I do believe in that. I believe in genius. I believe it's great to work with geniuses. I'm working now with Stephen Sondheim. There's nothing like it to work with Arthur Lawrence or Leonard Bernstein, or in any field, in Wall Street with Warren Buffett or with Harry Tisch. To be able to associate with them is wonderful. To invest with them, you don't have to know them. But I believe in leadership. I believe it can be taught, maybe by osmosis, maybe by some other fashion. But I promulgated at Harvard the idea of a chair in leadership, which has never been done before. And Larry Lessig is extraordinary. He's simply a remarkable man. He's still young. He's a giant. And he is somebody who believes also, as I do, in leadership. And hopefully that combination will matter. But Larry is the guy, some of you may know without knowing his name, who has been involved heavily in what he calls the corruption of America. He believes that allowing rich people to contribute enormously to campaigns has ended up with a Congress that is totally at the whim of a few very rich people in the country, and that our whole government is skewed, and he calls it corruption of government. And he is trying to create his own pacts to fight the money people. I've told viewers, it's doomed to failure because the rich somehow do control the agenda in this country and will keep doing so. But
as contrasted to other countries.
No contrast. Except there's more money. There's more money in America. There's more money here, and that money is active politically and gets its way. And most of the time you don't see it, but it works all the time. And that's what Harry's doing. But anyway, leadership to me is vital. And being able to, it's why I like to mentor, being able to teach people, being able to pass on some of what you have learned is to me very vital. And I'm just a great believer in trying to educate people and teach them about leadership where you can, rather than saying it, you learn it and you grow into it. But I'm very big with that.
You had a very brief but outstanding career in politics. What would it take to involve you in politics again?
Hillary Clinton. How's that for next?
Great.
I had, it's not so brief. My involvement with Bill was several years when he was running the first time. I thought he was exceptional when I met him when he was governor. And I was looking around for a candidate, and I found him, and I agreed to support him. And sidebar, he met with me for 2 hours in my office when he was governor. And I told him I was meeting all the 7 dwarfs, if you remember that, the 7 guys who were going to run for president in the Democratic Party. And I was then actually probably more a Republican than a Democrat, but I was frustrated with what was going on in the country, and I was looking. And at the end of the session, I met Bob Kerrey the day before, and I met Clinton. And at the end of the session, he stood up with that massive paw of his on my shoulder. How do I do? And I said, my quest has ended. I said, I've met the next president of the United States. And he said to me, really? And I said, yes, I have, and I will work for you. I'm not going to see anyone else. There's no need. I've met the next president. He never mentioned it to me again. We obviously got to know Hillary and Bill over the years. And on election night in Little Rock, after all the hoopla and everything, he walked over, big hand on the shoulder, and said, what happened in your office? It was a year and a half earlier, and he remembered it, and he came over that night, the night he was elected. What happened in that office that made you say your quest ended and you found the next president? And I said to him, very simply, you were brilliant, but there are a lot of brilliant people out there. But the one thing that I saw in you that I never saw was the compassion. That I saw in you when you spoke about the things that you knew. You had a caring that you can't fake. And so all the politics, but now I can't, because under the new rules promulgated as a senior executive at a public investment firm, I can no longer give a dime to any candidate other than the president. I can a national office I can give to, and I've already told Hillary that if she runs, I'm back. So that's my political involvement.
Here's another question. The Voice, America's Got Talent. So you think you can dance? Endless cook-off shows. Would you consider a reality TV show competition for theater? Could this be a way to reach you?
Whoever asked that's a terrific question. I don't think so, because I think there's something about seeing something live. But I will tell you, American in Paris was working on something with So You Think You Can Dance, in which we would have an involvement because there's so much dancing on the show, we will have so much. But then they wanted to have a sort of bagel where the winner of their show could get a role in American in Paris, and I felt as a producer that would cheapen our show. So there is a differentiation. It's possible that a winner of that show could be good enough to audition for a role and get it, not because there's a connection, but I hated the idea of letting people know that if you won, you're on Broadway. I think it cheapens what Broadway's about. I mean, to me, now, apparently, the exact same thing is now happening. We turned it down. It's being done with On the also coming to Broadway, the original
Camden
Green show.
and Leonard Bernstein.
And they're doing that. Somebody from the show will be in our town. So
It has big chorus.
and that's the difference, by the way, between producing. Producers make judgments every minute of every day about things like that. But I don't think it's competition for Broadway, but I do think it enhances, just as Glee did and just as Smash did, it enhances an appreciation for dance or culture. That's unlike, like the chef contests or there's a new one now, Naked, whatever.
Meeting naked or
Eating
something like
naked,
that.
cooking naked.
Just, did you ever expect your life to unfold the way it has?
No, I find life to me is an endless mystery, and I've loved every day of it. And I'm not sure why, probably because my father passed away when I was very young, and that I learned at a very, very early age, as a young teenager, I learned to love every day of life, because I learned from his illness and death that this is a short game, and it can happen any day. So my whole philosophy of life has been one of enthusiasm, positive. I always say to people, pessimism isn't worth it. Being pessimistic doesn't help you any. Optimism helps. Pessimism doesn't. That's my view anyway. But I'm a very positive, upbeat person about everything, and it's helped me to broaden my life, and also me to doing as much as you can, because one day I will not be able to. I take a physical every year on my birthday so that I don't forget. It's a great trip. I've told my friends to do it. Most of them always say to me, "Oh, I went to the doctor 2 years ago," and it turns out it was 8 years ago. Men don't go to doctors. Women go to doctors. Men are lost. But every year when I get my physical results from my doctor, I shake his hand and I say, "This is the best day of my life," because I now have at least an opportunity to go forward. Because I know that one day it will not be that way. And anyone who doesn't, everyone has a philosophy of life, but in essence, I just believe as long as I'm healthy and I have a healthy family, then life is good. And I love every minute of life. And could I have expected to have done what I've done and achieved what I've achieved? Never. And I'm stunned by it, but I love it. And I try to the degree that I can to pass it on to younger people, to inculcate them. It's the reason I've stayed in Wall Street through this whole period, is to teach. I don't have to do it, but I stayed as vice chairman and head of the private equity business because it enables me to work with kids. It's the same thing in school. I'm involved in both Brooklyn College and Harvard in leadership roles because I can work with the young people and who do love it. And most people, when they succeed, run off and forget about who's trailing after them. I try not to. It's part of what I try to squeeze into my life. But everyone's very different. And I'm blessed, as I say, I have the energy to do it. I don't get tired somehow. I don't sleep. I don't get tired.
Well, thank you for sharing these views, your generosity, your enthusiasm, your passion, the range of your interests, and the range of your contribution, for all of the above, and for the interesting, entertaining, and lively conversation. On behalf of everyone, all thanks to you.
No standing ovation.
We'll try again. I'll try.
We'll get a standing ovation when you leave. When you leave. But thanks for listening.
There are so many more questions, let alone Roy's philosophy. He has his own rules of the road. So when you come for part 2, we will give him a standing ovation. And by standing now, we will encourage him to return. Thank you, dear Roy.